and hopefully you could read that. Let's jump in. So Tan Rabbanan, we're on Hey Amud Beis. Here we go. Tan Rabbanan, we have a brisa. The brisa is going to explain to us the different prohibitions, and we're going to be able to address today some important questions about what type of interaction can you have with chametz. So, for example, let's say you have non-Jewish workers working in your house. Are you allowed to have chametz in your house? Are you allowed to go to a non-kosher store on Pesach? Are you allowed to sit, and see chametz? The pasuk says you cannot see chametz. Are you allowed to see chametz? Are you allowed to, if your non-Jewish neighbor says, hey, could you hold on to my my chametz for me? I'm going out of town. Could you hold on to this? Put this cake in your fridge or whatever it is. My fridge broke. Could I put some dough in your fridge or whatever it is? Are you allowed to do that? Okay, so we're going to be addressing some of those questions today. Let's jump in. Tan Rabbanan, we see in a brisa. Shivas yamim sa'ar lo yimatze b'vatechem. Pasuk says for 7-day period, leaven should not be found in your homes. Matam lomer. Why do I need this? V'lokva nemar. The pasuk above that says v'layar lecha chametz v'layar lecha sa'ar b'chol gvulecha. That's right. This pasuk said that you should not find chametz or leaven in your borders. If you don't find chametz in your borders, you certainly don't find chametz in your house. So once I have pasuk number 2, why do I need pasuk number 1? So the Gemara says, Lefish nemar lo yira lecha sa'ar. Since it says leaven shall not be seen to you, that means, okay, the pasuk says lo yira lecha sa'ar. In the second pasuk it says leaven should not be seen to you, lecha. See that word lecha? To you means, okay, so what does that mean? So, shalcha yataroa, that would mean that you do not see your own. Aval taroa shel acherim v'shel gavoa, but it would mean that you are allowed to see that of non-Jews and that of Most High. Most High means hektish, things which don't belong to you but belong to the base of Mikdash. Okay, and yachal yatmin. Okay, so again, the fact that it says lo yira lecha sa'ar tells you that you cannot see your own chametz, but you are allowed to see that of others. Okay, meaning non-Jews or things that which belong to the base of Mikdash. That is not included in the prohibition. However, yachal yatmin, it could be thought that you'd be allowed to hide your chametz. In other words, put it under something so you don't readily see it. And in addition, maybe you would be allowed to accept deposits from a non-Jew to hold on to his chametz for him. Tamalomar lo yimatze. Therefore, the pasuk says lo yimatze. This first pasuk says no, it cannot be found. Cannot be found means even if it's hidden, it could be found, right? If it's hidden in your house, it's under some stuff, it's in a somewhere in your house. But leimatze means it could be found. Leimatze also comes to teach you that if a non-Jew gives you his chametz, you still cannot have it because it will be found in your house. Okay. Ein li ella. This next paragraph is going to be explained later on in the Gemara because it's a little hard to understand, but it's still part of the brisa. Ein li ella benachri shelo kibashto. This may only include a non-Jew. Literally means who you do not dominate. Okay, who does not live with you in the courtyard. But what this means is that this may have only included a non-Jew who is not someone who keeps the 7 Shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. However, nachri shekivashto v'sharim chabachatzer b'nayim. But what about a non-Jew who keeps the Shiva mitzvahs b'nei Noach and lives with you in the same courtyard? Maybe you would think you'd be allowed to have his chametz. It seems a little backward, right? Normally you would say, right? Who's more like you, the non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvahs or does not? The one who does keep the 7 mitzvahs. But it says it over here backwards. It says, I would have only thought that I'm not allowed to have the chametz of a non-Jew who does not keep the 7 mitzvahs, but a non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvahs. How do I know it still includes the prohibition? So again, it seems backwards. We'll come back to that. Tamalomar, leimatze b'vatechem, the pasuk says, it should not be found in your homes, meaning that all types of non-Jews, you're allowed to have his chametz. Okay? So says the brisa further. Again, we're going to unpack this brisa, don't worry. Ainli ela shebatechem, we're at 5b2. I would have thought only the chametz which is in your home. However, bivoros b'shichin uvoros b'nayin. In other words, now the Gemara is saying like this. Had I only had this pasuk, what does it say? Lo yimatze bivatechem, implying I'm not allowed to have chametz in my house. What about chametz in your shed in the backyard? Okay, that's the equivalent of a pit, back in the day, right? So I have a shed in my backyard. Am I allowed to have chametz there? I don't know. It says I can't have it b'vatechem, right? So the pasuk says b'shich maros b'nayin. How do I know it can be pits, ditches, and vaults? Tamalomar b'chol gvulecha. The words b'chol gvulecha mean in all your borders, teaching me that if it's my chametz and it's in my backyard, or I keep it in another field, it's still going to be included in the prohibition. Okay, the brisa continues. V'adayin ani omer babatim over mishum bal yirah uval yimatze. That I would still, based on the way I'm reading these psukim, it would come out that in my house, I have chametz, I'm going to be in violation of 2 prohibitions. One is bal yirah, it should not be seen. Uval yimatze, it should not be found, right? Because in one's home, you're going to have both this pasuk, lo yirah lecha, and lo yimatze, right? Because my house in my border? Yes. Right? So both these, so if I have chametz in my house, I'm going to be in violation of bal yimatze, right? Because it's in my house. And since my house is in my border, which is what this pasuk is about, borders, lo yirah lecha is also going to apply. So I'm going to be in violation of both, okay? And I'm also going to be in violation, and based on the way we just learned the psukim, I'm also not going to be allowed to hide chametz, like bury it. And based on the way we learned the psukim, I'm not going to be allowed to accept a deposit from a non-Jew, as we explained above. However, bagvulin, but outside of my house, meaning if it's not in my house, if it's in my shed, if it's in my fields, etc., shalcha iyata roa, what would come out is I'm only not allowed to see my own chametz, but I would be allowed to see the chametz of non-Jews and of the and of hektish. In other words, like this: B'chol gvulecha, in the pasuk that says in all my borders, there I have the words lecha, only my own. So it implied that I'm only not allowed to have my own chametz. But if someone comes along and gives me chametz to hold on to, I would think that it's totally fine, right? That would be the classic example, right? Because only in bivatechem am I not allowed to have, other people's chametz. But in bigvulecha, but outside of my house, b'chag vulecha, outside my house, which means all my borders, there it's only lecha. It's only my stuff. Lecha means yours, but other people's, there'd be no limitations, right? So minayin, where do we learn? Minayin litin es ha'amor shel zeh b'zeh v'shel zeh b'zeh. How do I know to apply whatever prohibitions exist in one are going to apply in the other? In other words, the Gemara is ultimately going to land is that there really is no difference between batechem, your home, and vulecha, your borders. That whatever prohibitions exist in one place will exist in the other place. Where do we see that? Tamalomar sa'or l'gzer shava. We have something called sa'or gzer shava. Gzer shava means when you have the same word in two places, then if there's a tradition, we're going to learn and take the principles of learned by one place is going to apply to the other. So for example, it says sa'or in this pasuk, it says sa'or in this pasuk, right? And therefore, whatever is true over here is going to be true over here. Whatever is true over here is going to be true over here. Okay? So ma sa'or amar babatim. Just like when it says sa'or in one's own home over mishum bal yira val yamatze, you're in violation. If you have chametz in your own home, you are going to be in violation of both bayira, chametz can't be seen and chametz can't be found. And you're not allowed to hide it, nor are you allowed to accept deposits from a non-Jew. Therefore, so too by the borders over mishum bayira val yamatze, you're going to be in violation of both. And you're not allowed to hide it, meaning I can't go ahead and hide chametz in my shed or in my field, nor am I allowed to take deposits in the field. And just like what it said by the borders, it says I'm not allowed to see my own, but it said I am allowed to see that of non-Jews or that of hektish, meaning I'm not in violation. Over here by gvulin, meaning outside of my house, it said lecha. I'm allowed to have chametz, which belongs to the Beis Hamikdash or belongs to a non-Jew. There's no such prohibition. So af sa'or amor babatim, so too in one's home, shalcha yato roa, yours you're not allowed to see, but you are allowed to see that of non-Jews and that of Most High. That is the end of the brisa. A lot of back and forth in the psukim. Basically what comes out is whatever prohibitions exist in one place exist in the other, and what comes out is that there are two violations, there are two prohibitions that I'm in violation of whenever there is chametz. One is bal yimatzeh, it should not be found. One is bal yira, it should not be seen. Okay? And the way to violate this, it has to be a Jew's chametz that is in my possession, whether it's my own or it's yours, right? Even if I can't go ahead and say, you take my chametz, I take your chametz. No. Then I'd still be in violation of two prohibitions. I could have, based on this Gemara, we'll discuss it a little bit further, the implication is that a non-Jew's chametz, which I'm not accepting responsibility for, is allowed to be in my house. Hektish, not so relevant to us. And hiding the chametz, putting it under something, is not enough of a way of taking care of it. It has to, right? You'll still be in violation of bayira uval yimatzeh. Okay? Good? Let's now unpack this price a little bit.
In our case, it's a little bit because we do the sale and things. They're not talking about this, but
because it's not ours. It's not ours. And actually, one of the things we do in the sale is we actually.
You can still find it.
You could find it. You could also see it, but it doesn't matter. It's not mine. It belongs completely to the non-Jew.
But it's b'vatzecha.
But it's so interestingly enough, one of the things that we do, it's not entirely the reason, but one of the things that we do when we sell it in our homes is we actually rent out the space that is that the chametz is in. Okay, so it's not just the chametz, we actually rent out the space. I'm sorry?
That's why they say, where is it?
that's part of why. Well, why is it also so that if the non-Jew wanted to get it, they could get it? But that's why we say exactly. That's why we want to know exactly where it is. But it's part of it is actually giving them the space. Okay, says the Gemara. Let's unpack the brisa. Amar Mar, Ein li ela b'nachri shaloki bashto vein sharoi imcha b'chatzos. The brisa again said something funny. It said, had I just had the initial pasuk, I would have thought that there's only a prohibition with regarding a non-Jew who does not keep the 7 mitzvos. How would I know that there'd be a violation? That how do I know the same halacha would apply when it's a non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvos? Tamalomar le'yamatze. The pasuk says it should not be found. So Gemara says klapi laya. The logic should dictate it goes in the opposite direction. Gemara says I'm going to buy ipuch. Abai says just switch it around. No problem. Just switch it around and basically say that just read it backwards. The way the Bryce is phrasing it is just the other way around. When it comes to tell you the prohibition of keeping when it comes to tell you the prohibition of keeping a non-Jew's chametz who you're accepting a chrys for, it's saying accepting responsibility. It's saying not only a non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvos, and you're not allowed to hold on to chametz of his, that you accept responsibility, but also a non-Jew who does not keep the 7 mitzvos, who you'd say is one step removed, you're also not allowed to hold on to his chametz. Okay. Rava disagrees. He says, Olam lo tepov. Don't switch it around. It's actually going on an earlier line of the brisa. It says like this, Shalcha roa. The pasuk says, yours you may not see. You're allowed to see that of non-Jews and that of hektish. That belongs to Beis Hamikdash. And that may be only true for a non-Jew who you really have no connection to, who doesn't keep the 7 mitzvos, who also doesn't live with you in a courtyard. How do I know the same would be true regarding a non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvos or lives with you in a courtyard? It shall not be found. Even there, you'd be allowed to have his chametz. I don't know of any place that we have such a halachic difference. Good question. I'm not sure. Okay, ask the Gemara. It's a little strange because that would mean, according to this read, the Tana over here is seeking a rule of permissibility, and it quotes the pasuk of the prohibition. So what's going on? Meaning, the way we're reading it now, according to Rava, is that we are actually trying to prove that it's going to be permitted, not for all types of non-Jews. And then how does he support that? By quoting a pasuk which is talking about a prohibition. So the pasuk says, "Mishum nemer lecha lecha trei zimni." The pasuk says, because the answer is that since it says lecha twice in the pasuk, you're right. In general, this pasuk is coming to talk prohibition, but since it adds a second lecha, this second lecha is coming to teach me that there is something which is going to be permitted. Okay, Amar Mar. Let's go a little bit further and then we'll pull it together. Halacha l'maisa. Yachal Yatmin. The Brisa said, you may have thought that you're allowed to hide his chametz, and you may have thought that you're allowed to accept deposits from a non-Jew, since the chametz is not yours. Tamalomer le'yamatze. The pasuk says it should not be found. But wait a second, Amar Tzreish, the beginning of the Gemara beginning of the Brisa said, Shalcha yetaro aval taro shalchem shal gavoa. It says you're allowed to see that of Gentiles, right? So in other words, within the Brisa, on the one hand, the Brisa says you're allowed to hold on to chametz of a non-Jew, and it also said you're not allowed to hold on to chametz of a non-Jew. Which one is it? So lo kasha hada kabbalah echrayas, hada lo kabbalah echrayas. The question is whether I accept responsibility for the chametz or not. In other words, my friend, I don't know, my non-Jewish friend comes and knocks on my door and says, hey, could you hold on to this bread for me, right? So if I say, sure, no problem, and I just hold on to it, and I'm just doing it as a favor, then it's just regular, then that would be problematic. But if then that would be fine, excuse me. But if I accept achrayas, accepting achrayas means I'm taking full responsibility. In other words, this is like a deal. The guy who comes to me and says, listen, I need you to hold on to this, but I need you to be if it gets lost, I'm going to charge you, etc., etc. Accepting responsibility means accepting responsibility. There, it's like it's mine. That's when the Gemara says I cannot do it. But if a person just says, hey, can you hold on to this for a little bit, more casual, I don't have full responsibility for it, then it would be permitted. Yeah? Okay? To illustrate this, Rava used to, we see a story where Rava used to tell the people of Mechoza. Mechoza was one of the cities in Bavel, and he says, Ba'iru chamira divnei chela mibataychu. Remove the chametz of the non-Jewish soldiers from your house. Okay? So basically, back in the day, the soldiers would actually be, you'd have to hold, we have this, American Revolution, you speak about, they talk about this? Quartering, exactly. Where the soldiers stay at people's homes. Now, not only would they stay at people's homes, but they would have food that they would keep for the soldiers. It was their food that they would keep in their homes. It was very normal. So he says, before Pesach, get rid of that food. Why? Because if that food becomes stolen or lost, they would come and say, hey, you, Mr. Jew, you lost that food. It's your responsibility, right? In other words, that's not food that you're just holding on to casually. If you're holding on food for the soldiers, then you don't know you have that food. In other words, each person was expected to hold on to quarter soldiers and to have, X amounts of food. If that food would get lost, they'd say, where's the food? It's your responsibility. So that's not just holding it casually for your friendly neighbor and you say, oh, I'm sorry, the mice got to it. I lost it. No problem. No, this is food that you have full responsibility for. Therefore, Rabbi said you have to get rid of it before Pesach because that's food that is considered yours, right? It's like yours and it's forbidden to be kept. Okay, now the Gemara is going to get into a little bit of a technical and,
Would they get in trouble by the soldiers? Like if they're responsible for feeding them?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
For not having it.
For not having it. And that's why it's considered yours because
But if you get rid of it for Pesach, they don't have it.
Okay, so hopefully they don't come on Pesach. If they come on Pesach, you feed them some matzah, whatever. But the point is, that's a technical question, a fair question, but it's a technical question. Yeah, fine. Now the Gemara, bear with me. The Gemara is going to get into a little bit of a choshen mish, but a little bit of a monetary discussion. So there is a debate about something which would cause you a loss of money. Is that considered like your money? Okay, so for example, over here, over here, this food is not your food. It belongs to the soldiers. But if it gets lost, whose responsibility is it? It's yours. And therefore, the Gemara is saying it's like it's actually, we treat it like it's yours, even though it's not yours. If the soldier comes to the door, it's their stuff. But it would cause you to lose money. We consider it like yours. And therefore, we understand why the Torah tells us that you have to get rid of it because it's like it's yours. But we have a debate in Bava Basra, I think it is, Bava Kama, that and there's an opinion that says that that's not considered yours. Michael Amemar. So why would we say that you're still liable? So Gemara says you're right. In general, it's not a problem. The pasuk over here says it shall not be found, and therefore saying there's a special extra prohibition that even though in general something which causes me a loss of money is not considered like my money, but over here, since it has extra pasuk, it is. Ikeda Amri, a slightly different version, flips it. It makes more sense for the one who says that in general, something that causes a loss of money is not considered money. 6a1. That's where we need an extra pasuk. The one who says in general that something which is going to cause me a loss of money is considered like mine. Why do you even need this pasuk? Obviously, it's included. I would have thought. I may have thought that whole argument is only when the object is lost. In other words, when the object is lost, do we say that it's now considered like it's mine since I have to pay for it? But as long as it's here, I don't have to pay for it. It's right over here. Maybe it's not considered mine. Kamash Milan, it is considered mine since I have responsibility. So practically speaking, let's just pull this together, and that is like this. Again, if you have a non-Jew, so this doesn't come up too often that you have to. I mean, I guess if you have like a storage company, if you own one of those storage companies, and there are people who put things into your possession, into your domain, and you have responsibility to pay them back for those things, that would be highly questionable because and you don't sell it for Pesach, then that's basically you having chametz because you have responsibility for it. Oh, it's not mine, it belongs to Fred. It doesn't matter. It's yours because at the end of the day, I'm taking responsibility for it. So again, if you own like storage block or whatever.
Well, that's not
we said everything applies because stars are. It applies. Doesn't matter. In your house, elsewhere, it doesn't matter, right? But if a non-Jewish worker, guy comes to your house and people have to tell, my maid or whatever, I don't know, like someone comes to my house, they're bringing their McDonald's, whatever it is, totally fine. Okay, make sure they don't spill it on your food. You don't want to. On Pesach, that's what we just said. As long as you respond, if someone brings in their lunch, if my cleaning lady brings in her lunch to my house and she wants to eat her lunch, and so it's fine. Do I have to take responsibility if she drops on the floor or a bird comes and picks it up? It's not my responsibility. 100%. I'm 100% based on these psukim. Only things I accept responsibility, which is again not very common. So a typical non-Jewish worker wants to come into my house and eat chametz, no problem whatsoever. Okay.
So if the contract
doesn't mean they have to be.
You're not responsible for any loss or damage.
If a contract says I'm not responsible for any loss, then it's 100% fine as well. Yeah.